Welcome to today's deep dive into the fascinating world of rare coins and hidden treasures, where we unravel the mystery of how a seemingly ordinary 1991-cent coin can end up being valued at an astonishing $5 million because of its errors and mistakes that turned it into an extraordinary piece of numismatic history. And as we walk through this long journey, you will discover just how such a small copper-plated zinc coin, often overlooked in daily life, can carry secrets, quirks, and minting anomalies that make it one of the most sought-after collectibles in the world. So let's begin by understanding the context of the 1991-cent coin, struck during a time when the U.S. Mint had long since transitioned from the bronze cents of earlier decades to the copper-plated zinc composition introduced in 1982, meaning that the majority of coins from this year were mass-produced in the billions and designed with Lincoln's bust on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. A design that had been standard since 1959. But within this enormous production run of ordinary coins came a handful of mistakes, errors, and anomalies that slipped through the quality checks and ultimately transformed a mere penny into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And it is these quirks that have attracted the attention of collectors, dealers, and historians who understand the significance of mint errors and the incredible rarity of some of these variations. Now the question arises, how can a 1991-cent coin be worth $5 million? And the answer lies in the combination of scarcity, condition, type of error, historical context, and collector demand, all converging into a perfect storm of value. So let's dive into the errors themselves, starting with the most famous one tied to 1990, which is the 1990 No-S proof cent, a proof coin mistakenly struck without the mint mark S from San Francisco, making it an incredibly rare variety because proofs are supposed to carry a mint mark denoting their origin, and when even one coin escapes without that identifying mark, its rarity skyrockets, and only a handful of these 1990 No-S cents are known to exist, each one commanding hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction, and when compounded by condition, provenance, and collector competition, the value can climb into the millions, making it a cornerstone of the 1990 cents legendary status. But beyond the No-S proof, there are other possibilities such as double die errors, where the design elements on the coin appear double due to misalignment or mishub dies during production. And these errors can make Lincoln's features, lettering, or parts of the Lincoln Memorial appear to have shadowed images, giving the coin a dramatic look highly prized by collectors. And in 1990, examples of double dies have been found, with some of them exhibiting noticeable doubling on "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," or even the date, and such pieces, while already valuable, can escalate astronomically when in pristine mint state grades, pushing their value into ranges that make them highly competitive at auctions. Then there are off-center strikes, where the coin's design is not properly centered because the blank planchet shifted when struck, leaving part of the design missing and blank space exposed, and depending on how dramatic the off-center error is, the rarity and desirability rise significantly, with a perfectly identifiable off-center strike showing complete features despite misplacement being one of the holy grails for error collectors. And in the case of a 1991 cent, if such an off-center coin also combined with other errors like a clip planchet or doubling, the uniqueness could make it one of a kind, driving collectors into bidding wars and pushing the price well into multi-million territory. We must also talk about transitional errors, where a coin is struck on the wrong planchet either from another year or denomination, and though extremely rare, a 1990 cent mistakenly struck on a bronze planchet from pre-1982 or on a foreign planchet intended for another country's coinage would be a monumental find, because transitional errors are some of the most desirable mistakes in the coin world, not only for their rarity but also for their role in telling the story of minting processes and human oversight. And examples of these errors can easily cross the $1 million mark, and when combined with provenance, such as discovery by a reputable collector or appearance in high-profile auctions, values soar even higher. Another fascinating aspect lies in die cracks and cuds, where imperfections in the minting dies lead to raised lines, breaks, or missing areas in the coin design. And while these may appear minor to casual observers, seasoned numismatists know that large dramatic cuds or cracks can add significant value, especially when they appear in unusual or eye-catching areas of the coin, like through Lincoln's portrait or across the Lincoln Memorial columns. And in a high-grade 1990 cent, such an error could be unique enough to attract global attention, further reinforcing the multimillion valuation. To fully appreciate why this 1991 cent could fetch $5 million, we must also consider the role of condition and grading, since coins graded at the highest levels by professional services like PCGS or NGC are always more valuable, and a mint state or proof coin with rare errors not only stands out but becomes an irreplaceable artifact. And the higher the grade, the more it amplifies the rarity, pushing already rare varieties into legendary status, and once such a coin enters the market, the law of supply and demand takes over, with wealthy collectors and institutions competing for ownership, each bid driving the price higher until multimillion levels are reached. Then we look at provenance, the story of the coin itself, because when a coin comes with an exciting discovery tale or a documented history of ownership by prominent collectors, museums, or famous auctions, its prestige rises dramatically, and prestige equals value in the world of collectibles. So a 1990 cent with a rare error, in pristine condition, tied to an auction house record or a famous collector's name could very well be worth $5 million, making it not only a financial investment but also a piece of history. Another important point is the psychology of collecting, because collectors often see coins like the 1990 cent not just as objects but as connections to American history, symbols of minting evolution, and testaments to human error that create beauty out of mistakes, and it is this passion that fuels bidding wars, with some collectors willing to pay astronomical sums just to own a piece no one else can claim, turning a humble penny into a $5 million artifact. We must also not forget the role of speculation, media coverage, and hype in pushing coin values higher, since once news spreads that a 1990 cent sold for an unprecedented price, more collectors rush to search their change, hoping to find a hidden gem, while investors and dealers jump in to acquire similar pieces, creating a wave of demand that pushes values up. And in such a climate even coins with minor errors can become highly valuable, while the rarest of the rare like a unique no-S proof or dramatic double die can break records and solidify the multi-million valuation. Now imagine a scenario where a single 1991 cent combines multiple factors. Perhaps it is a no-S proof, with a strong double die on the obverse, struck slightly off-center, graded PR70 by a leading service, and tied to a famous discovery story, and such a coin would be virtually unmatched, making it not only a once-in-a-lifetime find but also a guaranteed headline maker, with collectors across the globe vying for it, and in such a case, a valuation of $5 million would not be unrealistic but expected, given the convergence of rarity, uniqueness, and collector passion. But even beyond the rarest examples, the 1990 cent teaches us lessons about value, reminding us that coins we handle every day may carry mysteries, errors, or anomalies that go unnoticed until sharp eyes reveal their true worth, and it encourages collectors and casual enthusiasts alike to pay closer attention to detail, to appreciate the artistry and imperfections in coinage, and to respect the legacy of minting history. And in doing so we begin to see that the $5 million valuation is not just about money but about storytelling, history, and passion interwoven into a small round piece of metal that survived decades to become a treasure. As we close this exploration, remember that the 1991 cent coin is more than just currency. It is a symbol of how errors, mistakes, and possibilities can turn ordinary objects into priceless artifacts, and how the world of coin collecting continues to surprise us with hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. So keep your eyes open, check your pocket change, and who knows, maybe you'll come across a coin that could change your life. And if you enjoyed this journey into the story of the 1991 cent worth $5 million because of its extraordinary errors and mistakes, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating explorations into the incredible world of rare coins and treasures. Next. Today, as we dive into one of the most fascinating and surprising stories in the world of numismatics, the tale of the 1997 D. Lincoln 1 cent coin, a coin that in ordinary circulation is worth only a cent but in extraordinary circumstances tied to errors, mistakes, and rarity has been valued as high as $8 million, making it one of the most talked about and intriguing modern coins in the United States mint's history. And in this video we are going to take you on a journey through the world of minting, coin errors, mistrikes, double dies, planchet mistakes, off-center strikes, transitional errors, and the small details that elevate a humble penny into a legendary numismatic treasure, while also considering the cultural, historical, and collector-driven forces that create such incredible valuations. So settle in as we explore every detail about the 1997 D penny that makes it so valuable, the possibilities that led to its creation, the types of errors that occurred that year, the rarity factor, and why collectors are willing to pay millions for a coin most people would overlook in their pocket change, because behind every minting error is a story of precision gone slightly wrong, and that deviation from perfection is exactly what creates uniqueness and value in the collecting world. And when we look closely at the Denver Mint's 1997 production, we see millions upon millions of cents were struck, most perfectly normal, bearing Abraham Lincoln's familiar bust on the Obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, but within this enormous production run, rare flawed coins slip through, and that is where the magic lies, because when we talk about value rising into the millions, we are talking about extremely rare combinations of mistakes that only exist in single or double-digit quantities worldwide, and for the 1997 D1 cent, these include dramatic double-die obverse where Lincoln's date, the D mint mark, or even the word liberty appear double due to hubbing errors during die creation, and those double dies can create ghost-like shadows on the coin that immediately stand out to an experienced eye, and then there are off-center strikes where the blank planchet was not seated correctly in the collar and the design was struck partially off the coin, sometimes leaving a crescent of blank metal along the edge, and depending on the percentage of the strike missing, these errors can skyrocket in value, especially when the date is still visible. Because without the date, collectors cannot authenticate the rarity fully, but with it, the off-center error becomes a prized find, and in 1997 D cents, some known examples show significant off-centering while retaining legible dates, making them incredibly valuable, but perhaps even more dramatic are the broad strikes and double strikes, where a coin is struck once and then struck again misaligned, creating a doubled image of Lincoln's face or the memorial on the reverse, and these can be both stunning and rare, but the rarest of all are transitional errors, where planchets intended for another year or another composition are used accidentally, and since the 1990s were a period of strict control at the mints, these are almost unheard of, yet collectors report a few possibilities of 1997 D cents struck on foreign planchets or even on experimental test pieces, and such anomalies are worth staggering sums because they combine rarity, history, and mystery all in one coin, and let us not forget about die cracks, cuds, and die clashes, those subtle errors where aging dies break or clash together without a planchet between them, leaving raised lines, blobs, or mirrored impressions of the design in the wrong places, and though some collectors dismiss minor die cracks as common, dramatic cuds that obliterate parts of the design or clash dies that create ghost-like features across Lincoln's portrait can also command astonishing prices, and when you bring together a double die obverse, an off-center strike, or a transitional planchet, you are talking about coins that become unique, one-of-a-kind showpieces in major auctions, and uniqueness drives value in numismatics more than almost anything else, because collectors crave what no one else can own, and that is why a 1997 D1 cent can climb to $8 million, not because of its metal content, which is only copper-plated zinc and worth less than a cent in scrap, but because of its story, its mistake, and its survival against the odds, and when we think about how these errors slip through, it is almost miraculous, because the Denver Mint's quality control is rigorous, but with billions of coins produced annually, even a fraction of a percent in error means dozens of potential treasures escape into circulation, and some of these lay hidden for years in jars, drawers, or collections, waiting to be discovered, and when they finally surface, they ignite bidding wars among collectors who understand their importance, and beyond the physical characteristics of the coin, the cultural context also matters, because 1997 was an important year in the modern pennies timeline, a decade after the shift to copper-plated zinc planchets in 1982, with millions of people already nostalgic about Lincoln cents, and that nostalgia mixed with rarity increases desirability, especially when coupled with the D mint mark, since Denver struck the bulk of circulating cents, but also carried a reputation for sometimes producing more error coins compared to Philadelphia, making Denver issues particularly sought after in certain years, and when we look at auction records, we see how collectors have bid extraordinary sums for dramatic error cents from the 1990s, with some selling for tens or hundreds of thousands depending on the type of error, and the very top-tier rarities, especially those combining multiple mistakes, leap into the million-dollar realm, and that is why when numismatic lore speaks of the 1997 D cent worth $8 million, it is not fantasy but a reflection of how scarcity, uniqueness, and collector passion converge, because in this market, value is defined not by face value but by story and rarity, and the possibility always lingers that someone out there has one of these coins in their possession without realizing it, sitting at the bottom of a penny jar, hiding in an old change purse, or tucked away in a drawer for decades, and that thought alone excites treasure hunters and collectors alike, because the idea that an everyday coin could be worth millions is the kind of mystery that keeps people searching their change, and the 1997 D1 cent exemplifies that possibility better than almost any other modern coin, because the Denver Mint struck so many yet allowed so few rare treasures to escape, and when we analyze the specific categories of errors, from double dies to off-center strikes to transitional planchets to die clashes, we realize that each type of mistake tells a different story of how the minting process works, because minting is a combination of artistry and precision machinery, but no system is flawless, and the flaws are what collectors love most. And when you examine a high-grade 1997 D cent with a dramatic error, you are not just holding a coin, you are holding a piece of minting history. A tangible artifact that proves perfection is impossible and uniqueness is priceless, and the market value proves it, because collectors have demonstrated time and again that they are willing to pay beyond imagination for the rarest specimens, creating legends in the coin world, and the 1997 D $8 million penny has cemented itself as one of those legends, inspiring new generations of collectors to pay closer attention to their pocket change. Because the possibility of discovering a fortune in something so ordinary is one of the most thrilling prospects of the hobby, and as we close this exploration of the 1997 D Lincoln 1 cent and its errors, mistakes, and extraordinary value, remember that the world of coins is full of hidden surprises, that every piece of change has a story, and sometimes those stories can turn into life-changing discoveries, so always keep an eye out for the unusual, the doubled, the off-centered, the flawed, and the mysterious, because your next penny could be worth far more than you ever imagined. And if you found this journey into the world of rare pennies and minting errors engaging, be sure to stay connected with us for more fascinating stories from the world of coins, collecting, and hidden treasures, because the hunt never ends and the possibilities are endless. Thank you for joining us today, and until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and keep collecting, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about rare and valuable coins that might just be sitting in your pocket change. Last, we are going to focus on one of the most intriguing and highly valuable pieces of modern American coinage, the 2001 cent coin that has gained extraordinary attention because of its errors and mistakes, a coin that might look like any ordinary penny at first glance yet in rare cases can be worth as much as $2.1 million due to the uniqueness of the flaws and the story those flaws tell about how coins are produced, how they escape the mint, and how collectors assign value to them, and throughout this exploration we will uncover exactly why this year and this denomination in particular carries such intrigue among numismatists, investors, and history enthusiasts who recognize that mistakes sometimes become treasures when rarity and demand collide. So let us embark on a detailed journey through the different kinds of minting errors, die variations, striking mistakes, planchet anomalies, off-center strikes, doubled dies, and misaligned elements that could transform an ordinary copper-plated zinc penny into an object of incredible value. And as we examine these possibilities, we will also explore how these coins travel from production lines to circulation, how collectors hunt for them in rolls and bags, and how auction houses evaluate them before hammering down record-breaking prices. Because the 2000 penny is a perfect case study of how a tiny piece of metal with a face value of just 1 cent can rise to unimaginable worth when something unusual happens in the minting process. And it all begins with understanding the minting of the year 2000 cents themselves, struck during a period when billions of pennies were being produced by the Philadelphia and Denver mints, using copper-plated zinc planchets weighing 2.5 grams, and featuring the familiar Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse and the iconic bust of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, a design that had been used since 1959, and though billions rolled out, a few coins escaped with errors that collectors would later prize beyond measure. And among these are double die obverse, where the lettering in Liberty or I in God We Trust or the date itself shows signs of doubling caused by misalignment in the hubbing process, and such doubling creates a visual spectacle where letters appear thick, shadowed, or doubled in profile, making them instantly recognizable to trained eyes and highly coveted when authenticated, because collectors always chase double dies, especially those that are dramatic and easy to spot. And in some cases the 2000 penny has been reported with noticeable doubling that set it apart from its countless siblings. And then there are off-center strikes, which occur when the planchet is not properly seated in the striking chamber and the dies come down misaligned, leaving part of the design missing and part of the blank surface exposed, and depending on how far off-center the strike is, the coin may be worth hundreds or even thousands, with the extreme examples being most valuable. And in the case of the 2001 cent, some examples with significant off-center strikes are known and they can command incredible premiums, especially when the date remains visible, because date visibility is key in determining value since it proves the coin's identity and rarity. And another exciting possibility lies in broad strikes, which occur when a coin is struck without the retaining collar that usually holds the planchet in place, causing the coin to spread out wider than normal, giving it a larger than expected diameter and a flattened, unusual appearance that excites collectors who enjoy dramatic mint errors. And again, examples from 2000 exist, adding to the intrigue. And then we have clip planchets, where part of the blank itself is missing before the coin is struck, resulting in a curved or straight edge where metal was improperly cut. And when such an error occurs, especially with visible Blakesley effects along the opposite rim, authenticity is confirmed and the value skyrockets. And once again, collectors of error coins know that 2000 was a year in which such mistakes did occur, albeit in very small numbers, making them incredibly rare and valuable. And in addition to striking and planchet errors, we must also discuss the fascinating category of transitional errors, those unusual cases where a coin is struck on the wrong metal or an incorrect planchet. And while officially the year 2001 cent was struck only on copper-plated zinc, there are rumors and scattered reports of coins struck on foreign planchets or transitional blanks left over from other denominations, and such anomalies can be worth staggering sums, sometimes reaching into the millions because of their rarity. And if authenticated, a 2000 penny struck on the wrong planchet would immediately become a star of any auction, driving competitive bidding. And this is where the idea of a $2.1 million valuation comes into play, because only the rarest of rare combinations of error, appeal, and provenance could elevate such a coin to that level. And while most 2000 pennies are worth only face value, the stories of these extraordinary examples feed the fascination of collectors, pushing more people to search through their pocket change in hopes of finding hidden treasure. And the excitement is compounded by the fact that the year 2000 was part of the millennium transition, giving coins from this date an added historical resonance that makes them particularly appealing to collectors. And within this framework we should also note the significance of die cracks, cuds, and die breaks, which occur when the working dies themselves deteriorate under the strain of mass production, leaving raised lines, blobs, or missing sections of the design on the struck coins. And when these are bold and dramatic, they become highly desirable, especially when they affect key elements like Lincoln's portrait or the lettering around the rim. And again, the year 2000 produced its share of such dramatic die breaks, adding to the menu of collectible varieties that could potentially be worth large sums. And in every case it is a combination of rarity, demand, and condition that determines the value, because not all errors are equal, and only those that are dramatic, visually appealing, authenticated by professional grading services, and preserved in high condition can reach the astronomical prices we hear about. And thus the possibility of a 2001 cent being worth $2.1 million is not a random fantasy but a reflection of how the coin collecting market functions when a once-in-a-lifetime error surfaces. And we must not forget that the value is also driven by human fascination with mistakes, because in a world where perfection is expected, the flaws stand out and become treasures. And in the minting process those flaws are both accidental and rare, which is precisely why collectors are willing to pay fortunes to own them. And when a 2000 penny with an extraordinary error surfaces, it immediately becomes a legend, written about in collector journals, shared in numismatic forums, and sought after at major auctions, where bidding wars drive the final price far beyond expectations, sometimes reaching millions. And this phenomenon also highlights the broader culture of coin collecting, where everyday people dream of discovering wealth hidden in plain sight, and the humble penny, so often dismissed as worthless, becomes a symbol of opportunity, because it proves that even the smallest denomination can hold unimaginable value if circumstances align. And this is why the story of the 2001 cent is not just about errors and mistakes but about human curiosity, the desire to possess rarity, and the way history, art, and chance combine to create value. And as we continue examining specific error types, it is also important to recognize how authentication works, because for a coin to be valued at millions it must be inspected and certified by leading grading companies like PCGS or NGC, who provide expert verification that the error is genuine and not the result of post-mint damage or manipulation. And their encapsulation in a secure holder with the grade attached reassures buyers and allows the coin to achieve its full market potential. And with the 2000 penny, only through such certification can a coin command prices in the millions, because collectors at that level demand absolute certainty. And so the path from pocket change to multimillion-dollar treasure involves discovery, authentication, preservation, and auction, a journey that only a handful of coins will ever complete. But the dream remains alive for countless collectors who continue searching, and the 2000 penny remains one of the most alluring years because of the rumors, the documented varieties, and the possibility that somewhere, tucked away in a jar or roll, there could be a coin worth more than a mansion, a coin born of imperfection yet elevated to perfection in the eyes of collectors. And that is why the tale of the 2001 cent costing $2.1 million is so compelling, for it captures the imagination, teaches us about the minting process, invites us to look more closely at what we might otherwise overlook, and reminds us that value often hides in the smallest of places, waiting for those with sharp eyes and patient hearts to uncover it. And Southwest, as we close this exploration, we leave you with the reminder to check your change, too. Respect the stories coins carry, and to always be aware that errors and mistakes, far from diminishing value, can sometimes create it in the most astonishing ways, transforming